2 million tires sit on the ocean floor right now, 1 mile off the coast of Fort Lauderdale. They were put there on purpose. And the worst part? They were supposed to save the ocean. This is the story of the biggest environmental backfire in American history, and what happened when we tried to undo it. Rewind to 1972. Nixon is president. Earth Day is only 2 years old, and America is drowning in tires. Exposed tire dumps are catching fire, choking cities with toxic smoke that burns for months. Landfills are overflowing. Nobody knows what to do with the hundreds of millions of discarded tires piling up across the country. Then someone asks a question that sounds almost genius. What if we drop them in the ocean? It wasn't as crazy as it sounds, not back then. Fishermen had known for centuries that sunken objects attract marine life. Old ships, rocks, even concrete blocks. Drop something on a barren seafloor, and within months, fish gather around it. Coral starts growing. An ecosystem appears almost from nothing. So a group called Broward Artificial Reef Inc. pitched a plan. Take millions of waste tires, bundle them together with steel clips and nylon straps, sink them off the Florida coast, and let nature do the rest. Free reef, free waste disposal. Everybody wins. The idea had serious backing. Ray McAllister, an ocean engineering professor at Nova Southeastern University, championed the project publicly. Goodyear signed on as a sponsor. The Army Corps of Engineers gave their approval. On dedication day, the Goodyear blimp circled overhead while a gold-painted commemorative tire was dropped into the water. Local news cameras rolled. People cheered. Over the following months, barges loaded with tires made trip after trip into the Atlantic. Volunteers and work crews bundled the tires, clipped them together, and sent them overboard. By the time the operation wound down, roughly 2 million tires covered 36 acres of seafloor, an area larger than 35 football fields. They named it the Osborne Reef, and then they waited for the miracle. Here's the thing about the ocean that landlocked optimism tends to forget. Salt water destroys everything. At first, the signs looked promising. Small fish explored the tire stacks. A thin film of algae coated the rubber surfaces. But coral, the organism that actually builds reefs, barely showed up. The rubber was too smooth, too chemically foreign, too unstable. Coral polyps need solid, permanent surfaces to anchor onto. Tires sitting on sand didn't qualify. Then the real problem started. The steel clips corroded, not over decades, over years. Salt water ate through them like they were made of paper. The nylon straps, battered by currents and UV degradation, frayed apart. One by one, the bundles disintegrated, and 2 million tires went free. Picture this. A loose tire on the ocean floor doesn't just sit there. Currents roll it. Storms launch it. A single tire can travel hundreds of yards in one weather event, and when it moves, it scrapes everything in its path. Sponges, young coral, sea fans that took 20 years to grow, gone in seconds. Multiply that by 2 million. The tires didn't build a reef, they built a wrecking ball. By the 1990s, the evidence was impossible to ignore. Tires were washing up on Fort Lauderdale's beaches, barnacle-crusted, sand-clogged circles of rubber that tourists stepped over and locals learned to dread. Each one was a message from the seafloor. Something down there had gone very wrong. Researchers from Nova Southeastern University dove the site and surfaced with grim reports. The original dump zone was essentially a marine dead zone. Almost nothing lived there. The seafloor was scoured clean, bare sand littered with scattered tires stretching in every direction. Surrounding natural reefs, some of the most biodiverse habitats on Florida's coast, showed impact damage from rolling tires. One marine biologist who surveyed the site described it simply. It looks like someone dropped a bomb down there. The irony was suffocating. A project designed to create marine habitat had destroyed it instead, and the tires weren't staying put. Hurricane seasons accelerated the spread. Andrew in 1992, Francis and Jean in 2004. Each major storm scattered tires further, pushing them into healthy reef systems and onto beaches up and down the coast. The problem wasn't shrinking, it was growing. Now imagine the task. Retrieve 2 million tires from the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, one at a time. There's no machine for this, no net big enough, no vacuum that works underwater. Every single tire has to be located by a diver, freed from whatever it's tangled in, lifted to the surface, loaded onto a barge, shipped to shore, loaded onto a truck, and hauled away. In open ocean, with currents, limited visibility, and the first organized attempt came in the early 2000s, when Coastal America, a federal partnership, had an idea that was equal parts practical and absurd. Use the tire cleanup as military dive training. Army and Navy divers needed real-world experience in challenging underwater conditions. The Osborne Reef offered exactly that. Military dive teams began rotating through the site. They'd descend into murky water, wrestle corroded tires from the sand, clip them to lift bags, and send them to the surface. On a good day, a team might pull a few hundred tires. On a bad day, strong current, poor visibility, equipment issues, they'd get a handful. The work was brutal. Divers described visibility dropping to near zero when sediment kicked up, leaving them working by feel in a maze of rubber. There was always the risk of getting snagged, tangled, or disoriented. One diver compared it to cleaning up a junkyard blindfolded while someone sprayed a fire hose in your face. After years of military operations and volunteer efforts, the numbers told a humbling story. By 2015, roughly 73,000 tires had been removed, out of 2 million. That's less than 4%. In 2015, Florida's Department of Environmental Protection committed $1.6 million to accelerate the cleanup, contracting professional dive teams to work the site systematically. It was the largest single investment in the project's history, and it represented a shift from treating the Osborne Reef as a side project to acknowledging it as a genuine environmental emergency. Professional crews brought better equipment, more efficient retrieval systems, and consistent daily operations. Recovered tires were barged to Port Everglades, trucked to processing facilities, and converted into fuel for energy generation. It was a small consolation. The tires that failed as reef material could at least produce electricity. Progress was real but painfully slow. The ocean doesn't cooperate on human timelines. Weather delays, equipment failures, and the sheer physical difficulty of the work meant that even well-funded professional operations measured success in thousands, not millions. And here's the detail that keeps marine scientists up at night. Many of the remaining tires are now partially buried in sediment. Some are entangled with living coral that has, against all odds, begun colonizing parts of the debris field. Removing those tires risks destroying the very recovery they're trying to encourage. The cleanup created its own paradox. Leave the tires and they continue to damage the environment. Remove them carelessly and you damage it differently. Every decision requires a judgment call that balances immediate harm against long-term recovery. What makes the Osborne Reef story endure isn't the tires, it's the people. Ray McAllister, the professor who championed the project, watched his environmental legacy curdle into a cautionary tale during his lifetime. The volunteers who spent weekends dumping tires in the 1970s, many of them genuine environmentalists who believed they were helping, carried the weight of that miscalculation for decades. And the generation that inherited the mess had to find motivation to fix something they didn't break. The military divers, the professional crews, the weekend volunteers who organized beach cleanups every time a storm washed more tires ashore, none of them dropped a single tire into the ocean, but they showed up anyway. There's something worth sitting with in that. The willingness to clean up someone else's mistake, not for credit, not for recognition, but because it needs doing. That might be the most human part of this whole story. As of the most recent assessments, well over 1 million tires remain on the seafloor. The 36-acre site still holds the bulk of the original deposit, and scattered tires have spread across a much wider area. Cleanup continues, but at current rates, full removal could take decades more, if it's even possible. Nature, meanwhile, hasn't waited for permission. In cleared areas, marine life has started returning. New coral growth, fish populations, and invertebrate communities are slowly reclaiming patches of seafloor. It's not the vibrant reef the 1972 dreamers imagined, but it's real, and it's happening on nature's schedule, not ours. The Osborne Reef is now studied worldwide as a case study in environmental engineering failure. It appears in marine biology textbooks, policy discussions, and urban planning courses. It changed how governments evaluate artificial reef proposals and helped establish stricter material standards for marine construction. Every generation thinks it's smart enough to improve on nature. Sometimes it's right, often it's not. The Osborne Reef sits at the intersection of good intentions and bad assumptions, a monument to what happens when we skip the homework and scale up before we understand the consequences. 2 million tires, 36 acres, 50 years of damage, 73,000 pulled out by 2015 through back-breaking work, over 1 million still down there. These numbers should bother us. Not because the people who started this project were villains. They weren't. They were optimists who trusted a theory that hadn't been tested. The ocean tested it for them and sent back a failing grade written in dead coral and empty sand. The next time someone proposes a bold shortcut to fix an environmental problem, and someone always will, the Osborne Reef should be the first thing we remember. Not as a reason to do nothing, but as a reason to do the work first. Study it, test it, respect the system you're trying to help. Because the ocean doesn't grade on intention, it grades on results. And right now, 1 mile off the coast of Fort Lauderdale, 2 million report cards are still sitting on the seafloor.